Yo, what's up, guys? We are in Nashville for day number 2 of Behind the Kick podcast with our good friend, Mr. Mark Poiesz.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude. So tell me, man, what have you been up to?
I have been, well, this is our slow season. This is February. So January, kind of December, January, February, for most people in Nashville is the off season, you could say, at least in some way or other. So for me, it's been mostly remote tracking work and busy on the coaching side because I'm now both a musician and a professional coach. But I left the road last August. Still looking for the right situation to go back out there. Have a young family, so I'm not jumping at literally anything, but looking for the right situation to get back out because I do love playing on the road.
Yeah, and you have a daughter, right?
Yep. Yeah,
That's
she's
such a
4.
blessing, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
A blessing and a challenge.
Yeah.
Are you putting music in front of her? Like, here's a little bit of drums, here's a little bit of this and this and that?
So it's funny because she can come up here to the studio anytime she wants, and she usually doesn't care. Which I thought surely this is going to be the coolest thing, but I believe very much in not like forcing anything on her.
Yeah.
She can if she wants, but I didn't come from a musical family. Like I was just compelled to do it, so it's sort of a 180 from how I was raised, and I'm like, well, that's fine because my parents supported me following up on whatever moved me. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to force this on you because then that means you're not going to discover what it is that you're going to really attach to.
Talk about that. If you didn't come from a musical family, like how did you get like your feet wet and like really jump in?
Man, I remember the exact moment that I wanted to play the drums. It was, as sounds so boring, but I was in kindergarten and they took us to like an assembly at the middle school to watch the middle school jazz band play. So like captive audience, right? And I just saw this gold sparkle Ludwig kit and somebody playing it, and I was like, I want to play the drums. And of course, like half the class is like, I want to play the drums back then.
Always, yeah.
The other half says saxophone, right? And I'm the one who just like kept doing it. And so I was bitten by the bug. Music helped make sense of life through my teenage years. And so that kind of was the point of no return. And then it's just become an integral part of life since then.
Was there like a particular time when, after you picked up the drums, since your parents were kind of pushing music on you, did you have that moment with them or with somebody else in your life that were like, okay, I need the drums, I'm a kid, how do I get drums?
Oh, that was a whole thing, man. Fortunately, they really stretched the budget. You know, we weren't necessarily a well-off family, so a drum kit's a big ask for like a Christmas gift or something. But they found this like super cheap drum kit at a BJ's wholesale club it was like turbo by Sunlight. So this is like, I mean, you're talking like bottom of the barrel.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to wait 6 more months to even get cymbals. So I was like hitting cymbal stands in the beginning as my cymbals. But I had that stuff, and I was in 5th grade band. So they let me start there, and then the drum kit was like, all right, we're going to see how much this really runs.
Yeah.
But I was running with it, and I was getting paid to play gigs by the time I was like 14.
There you go.
And I never let it ruin like the school side of things or anything else I was doing. It was just, you know, compelled is the word that I always use for it. I was just compelled, and I was very fortunate that they were willing to support there. And like I said, by the time I was getting paid to play gigs, I could afford to buy the gear that I wanted or needed to buy. So
That's awesome, man. Let's touch on that, man. What do you think it means to have a good support system as a musician?
Man, on one end, I completely recognize that not everyone does.
Yeah.
And that sometimes is a really powerful catalyst for them to dive into music in a really special way and do amazing things. Because music is something that comforts us, and it heals us, and it inspires us. On the other side, it's really hard to do something if you don't have some sort of a structure that can support you doing it. So I was really I was blessed not only with a family that was open, but I happened to go to a great public school system with an incredible music program. Yeah. So I could do all the stuff at school. Like there was band, there was orchestra, there was jazz band. There were so many ways to learn and build experience. I don't know how it would have panned out for me, just a kid in suburban Pennsylvania, if I didn't happen to have that stuff.
Yeah.
Some other places, you know, sometimes if you go to church and there's like contemporary music in your church, you have that opportunity.
Yeah.
My church definitely didn't have that kind of stuff
Yeah.
growing up. So I just happened to be lucky that I was in a great public school, and that my parents were open-minded and like kind of gave me a corner of the basement
Yeah.
for years.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, man. So you're a coach, right? Is that something?
Yeah, I also work as a professional coach. I have clients that are in corporate America also, but the real passion with that and like the long-term view is to really help professional and personal development in entertainment and with creatives. I think that we are a segment of the population that stands to benefit the most from that and has the least access to it in a qualified way. There are a lot of coach is a word that people can throw around. Like you couldn't just call yourself an attorney, for instance. You will get in trouble if you do that. But anyone can call themselves a coach. And yet there's a lot of people that don't really know what they're doing when they're working with somebody one-on-one. So I pursued during the pandemic, actually, I got a bunch of the certifications that are sort of the gold standard there in the industry. And it was important to me because I wanted to know that I would be effective. That's sort of a flaw and a virtue that I have where like I will not let myself go somewhere if I am not sure that I could deliver what I am supposed to deliver. So for me, the coaching thing is a really like sort of a slow burn toward hopefully by the time maybe I don't want to be playing as much, I'll really have built something there. And in the meantime, in a time like this, it's nice because it keeps me busy while I'm not on the road.
Yeah, I saw that on your Instagram, man, about how you talked about having the importance of having a certification. Yeah,
I mean, so many people, you can fake it till you make it a lot of the time. But if we're working with other people, I mean, gosh, why wouldn't you? That's kind of the question I like to ask. Like, I also went to music school. I have a degree in jazz drum set from the University of Miami. If I were already so busy before college that I didn't have time to go to college, and I wouldn't have done it. But since I wasn't that busy and I had these big career goals, I wanted to go to the best possible school to get the best education and experience I could so that I could stack all the chips in my favor. And I look at coaching the same way. If I want to help people, not just make money, side hustle, but if I really want to help people, I'm sort of proving that I care about helping them by investing in my education, my experience, my supervision, all of those things that go along with an actual coaching accreditation.
I think that's important because like you start to see how the world is expanding to maybe everybody is that quote unquote coach. Right? Everybody has a little bit of talent in one particular area that they just so happen to love or that they like to do on the side as a side hustle. And it's one of those things that you're like, okay, they're calling themselves a coach, whether they're in like the workout world of getting healthy, a nutritionist, you know, and in counseling and those kinds of things. But the more in depth that you get into that coaching, the more you feel like, okay, I need that certification. I need to actually show, not necessarily your worth, but show the work behind it. And so could you dive into a little bit of what you're doing in that coaching and what you specialize in?
Yeah, so to tie on to one of your points first, what I think some people do when they start out is like, oh, I have all this expertise to share. I'll call myself a coach and I'll share it. And what they will run into sooner or later is that they don't have enough successful clients. And that's because people don't need to be told what to do. That information's already out there. They need to address the barriers that are keeping them from doing what they know to do. And that's what I do as a coach. It's very rooted in psychology and understanding what are the things that keep us from using the information that we already have. So what I do as a coach, honestly, I like to differentiate between a teacher and a coach. If I'm a teacher, I'm talking. You try it out and then I talk some more. And sometimes that's the right thing. If I'm teaching you rudiments, I'd better teach you rudiments. I can't coach you rudiments. But if you're talking to me about how to get what you want out of your career, I need to coach you on that. I need to ask you a lot of very insightful questions that are going to cause you to have aha moments. And then we craft together a plan to turn that into action that you're accountable to. So what I do as a coach, I like to say that I'm helping people build resilience and ultimately leadership qualities in themselves. Not because everyone has to have a leadership title, but because I think being a true leader is really important. Someone in a group who can be counted on to be calm when things are chaotic, somebody who can make wise choices, somebody who has invested in themselves so that they can support other people. So I really like cultivating all those things with people. And if I'm working with a drummer, for instance, sometimes they will be like, hey, you know, I really want to pick your brain about this. And I say, that's cool, we can talk about that. But I'm not coaching you, I'm just telling you. And then we might, the next time we get together, they might have had trouble implementing that. And then I get to coach them on it. Okay, well, what happened? What did you feel in your body as you were trying to do that thing we talked about? And then they'll start realizing something else that really has to be addressed.
Man, so I have a question for you specifically, man. How do you separate Mark the drummer on the road versus Mark the coach? Like, what if you see certain cats that maybe need coaching? Do you approach them?
No.
How is that?
Man, I find that I'm at my best when there is as little separation as possible. Because coaching, the skills that a good coach has are that they're a great listener, that they are empathetic, that they are a person of character. I want to embody those all the time. Not in a way that like broadcasts them out or tells people to look at me, but just it's better if I'm that way.
And by example kind of thing.
Exactly.
Right?
And what's funny is people tend to spark up their own conversations if and when they've noticed something and they decide they're ready. It's not my place to tell anyone what they should do. I actually don't call myself a life coach because I don't really believe in that term. You can live life however you want. If you decide you want something different than you've been getting, then we could talk. But you can live your life however you want. It's not my place to say. There's 8 billion of us here, you know? I've got a sample size of 1. But what I find is that if I'm sort of bringing these together, the coach behind the drums is a less egotistical drummer. And the drummer as a coach is someone who's learned about energy flow and learned about connecting with people on a big scale. And to me, I like those to actually kind of come together, even if I don't talk that way. But inside, I actually like being aligned with it.
I mean, I'm sure Art can attest to that as far as just, you know, in his own business, like kind of connecting with people to kind of help either, you know, buy a product or just be a mentor in that. And I think that's what we're trying to do on Behind the Kick is, you know, yes, I want to know about your gear, but I want to know about the person. You know, does the character match the chops?
That was something that was early on, like, I don't know, we were talking about that very, very early on in the podcast, just the conversation about it, you know, of the idea, because, you know, Chris started it. And the more that I started to look at what I was doing as a person and where my life was going, you know, and what I wanted to do next. You know, I was off the road, not working a full-time corporate job, running Destroy Drum full-time. I started to think, like, okay, if I was going to come in here and us work together, like, how is it going to look in the longevity? And when we started to get to know each other, that was that conversation that started to happen about the heart and the character, and even that conversation of like, well, these are the things I'm trying to improve, these are what you want to improve as a person. Like, you really can't help someone until they decide to put the work in. Like, I think that's just life in general. Just anything that you are really going after. Like, yes, I can give you advice, I can show you how I did it, I can give you a blueprint, I can just spell it out for you and draw it however you want to internalize it, but I can't force you to do these types of things. So when we started to talk about character, it was one of those things where I thought about, I came up with that line of like, yeah, you know what, he was always the one to tell me, like, I don't care about your sticks, I don't care about your cymbals. And then I was like, you know what, man, like, I really don't care who you play for. Like, I want to know if that character matches those chops, because I know a ton of guys that have great gigs, but they have them because they're really great people. And you can put anyone behind that kick, and they can play that pocket.
Yeah.
It's a country gig that's not the craziest thing in the world, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying country music is easy, by far it's not. But there are things out there where you start to see drummers have that ability across the board, but more times people are hiring based on the character, and can they stand them for X amount of time?
Yeah.
Can they handle it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A career in music, I have an online course that talks about this stuff, and it's not me pitching it, but it's exactly what you're saying. There's 3 components to getting a gig and keeping it. You play the part, look the part, and be a good person. You can sometimes get by with 1. A lot of people sometimes get by with 2. But the only way to know that you are highly likely to get what you want out of your life or your career is to have all 3. And the character one is often why people get fired. The playing might get you hired, but man, let's be honest, we play simple music.
Yeah.
Especially here in Nashville. We play simple music. We play it very well, but we play simple music. It is nothing like, jazz school, like odd time this, crazy 400 BPM, up tempo that. No, like we don't run into those like pushing the boundaries of our instrument situations. This is music for the masses, and we travel together. We live together, basically. That's kind of the most important thing. And for each of us, when like the career goes away and the instruments ultimately go away or don't get used as much, the character is the only thing you have left anyway, right?
Yeah, and I think that's really true to who you are as a person. Like, start subtracting the gigs, start subtracting the status, start subtracting the notoriety, and all of a sudden it's like, what do you have left? And I think that's one of the harder questions, is when you were coming up in this game and like you were really putting in the time as somebody that was in music, that went to school for it, that knew the fundamentals, that could say like, this piece of paper says that I am certified and I am that guy that knows up here how to do all of this. When you started to learn about that character, were those hard, was that a transition of going through hard times and understanding like just being a young guy in the game and just cutting it up and cutting your teeth in the game? It's like, oh, this is where I really want to focus myself as a person, and you started to draw in these more of your personality, where you're now having your own business besides playing drums. Like, how did you blend those when you started to see like, okay, I have what I need to know that I have an understanding of the fundamentals. Now I want those other 3 or 2 pieces of the component. Where did that come into play?
How did I blend them? I mean, I think that's just part of the journey of life. It's hard to point to any one thing. I'm somebody who, like, I've been attuned to mental health from an early age. So that naturally leads to a few things. It leads to hopefully pursuing healthy habits. And it also leads to an interest in psychology. And psychology is going to tie to philosophy, and then you get into this whole character thing. Not in a holier than thou way, but just as studying and learning, and what do other people do? What are some paths that I could explore along this? And for me, it's something that kind of all happened at the same time. When you play music and travel, you have a lot of downtime. And some guys will just binge watch TV shows. I'm the one that would be reading books. That's just how I spent my time. And I think that it's just something that happens organically. A quote that I used just a couple days ago, somebody that just popped back in my head around this is, life is what happens when we're busy making other plans. And life is what happened, all these things that you're talking about, they just kind of come together. And my plan for years was, I just want to play arenas and stadiums. If you asked me at any point from age like 14 to 30, that was exactly what I would answer. And it would be that short. That tells you the whole picture. All I want to do is play arenas and stadiums. And life is what happens when, you go through some loss and you look for deeper meaning, and you meet people or get to situations and you realize they don't quite have the luster that you expected. And that's where all these other things kind of come in organically.
I guess this testament to that, man, is just like an artist kind of has boxes they check off for, their musicians. What are some boxes that you check off for a gig to say, you know what, I think that's a good gig. I think I'm going to take that.
I think to me, it comes down to 4 things for a gig. And this, I think, is not just me. This would be anybody, but they would apply these differently. The music first, the people that you're around and working with, the money and the schedule, because the money and the schedule don't necessarily go together.
Yeah.
And you could do something and hate the music, but love the people you're working with, the money and the schedule. Again, like you could pick 2 or 3 of these things and it work out pretty well. Ideally, all 4 are there. That is the magical thing. And even in one person's career like myself right now, the kind of schedule I'm willing to work is not the same as when I was 25. When I was 25, you could have said, we're going to be gone the entire year this year. You are not going home. And I'd be like, cool, man, storage unit, let's do this.
Yeah.
Now I've got a 4-year-old, and I actually have to sit down with her and talk to her every time I leave town. And so the kind of things that I would entertain now are a little bit different. I remember when I was a teenager thinking that the people component wasn't really all that important.
Oh, yeah.
And now I'm like, man, I cannot, like, you know, I can zip it if I don't agree with people, but I cannot be surrounded by an entire group of people that either maybe there are ethical issues with, or just like there's nothing in common. We are human beings and we're traveling together. We got to connect on something, or this is like, that will take a toll on your mental health. So to me, the music, the people, the schedule, and the money are all important. And you can't compromise too many of those, or you will be regretting it.
Yeah. Do you think that's what made you want to start becoming a coach, is because you saw a need for those areas in musicians' lives?
It's funny, the coaching thing, I got all the certifications about 5 years ago, but what I realized long before that is that people that would come to me for drum lessons, like a lot of the time we would barely be picking up the sticks. And I was like, oh, a lot of what I have to offer that they really want from me is not this.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool.
And so it was a gradual thing that really diving into that was something that happened, and it accelerated through the pandemic because, as we all know, you know, touring stopped, and I was already in sort of the stream pursuing those things. It was pure coincidence that it accelerated because I could just do whatever, and I was terrified that I wouldn't be playing drums again, at least in the ways I had been. But I was so fortunate that it was like, well, where did we spend our time? Like, again, I didn't binge watch shows. I was in classes. And that kind of saved my sanity through the pandemic, honestly, because I had a mission. I had something I was working toward.
I think something that you've taught me from kind of watching your videos and kind of, you know, getting to know each other over the last couple of months is like how and I make my personality to fit with the longevity of my career.
Yeah. I think being able to be flexible while still being authentic is the catch-22. You want to be able to get along with anybody, but you don't want to be such a chameleon that you don't know who you are. You don't have identity.
That's strong, because it's almost like you strive to be that chameleon. You strive to be able to put yourself in any room. And I think personally I've struggled with that.
Same.
It's one of those things where I want to be able to be the guy, but I can't be the guy for everybody.
No.
And I'm just the guy for me at the end of the day, because it's almost like you do a priority check, right? You start to say, okay, why are these things important to me? How am I going to get there? But I'm not going to just make it about me. And it's not going to be that idea of like, I need to go get mine, at least for me. And that's just learned over time, I feel like. I haven't been able to understand what it means not to touch the stove without touching the stove, you know? And that's where I'm like, okay, I understand that as a person, I've always have strived to separate myself from a business owner, because those are two different things that you don't mix when it's like different friend groups or you're out and about with different people doing different things. And I mean, I guess to some of my friends that I know really well, sometimes that's the first introduction. Hey, this is Arturo. He owns the short drum. It's like, I just want to be Arturo today. Can we separate the business for a second? Because I don't want to have to get into the whole conversation. And I don't want to have to just like start talking about all of it. It's like, I just want to know the person I'm being introduced to, get to know them as a person, person. not business.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the things that I look forward to least in a new conversation with people is if they're like, "Well, what do you do?" I was at a party, somebody's birthday party, one of my wife's friends the other night, and that came up. It's like I could tell you what I've done, I could tell you I could tell you all sorts of stuff, but I kind of don't know what to make of this question.
I'm like, I just like living life. You know?
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of the answer. And yet, what's tough is like that's kind of like shutting the door on the conversation at the same time. And it's such a difficult thing because I think our culture definitely encourages us to be what we do.
Yeah, as a musician. Yes.
And as performers, especially, we are what we do. I mean, gosh, you could put my face next to a drum kit and endorses this gear and plays with these artists, and we're so trained to think that way. But I think that sort of essence of who am I being bigger or deeper than the doing that I do, that's a distinction that I think about a lot, and I often share with people a lot, is the being versus the doing. And the being is so much more important. And if you're really aligned with the being, the doing just kind of flows instead of grind.
Right.
But I, back to what you were originally saying about, not being the guy for everything. There can be pressure to act a different way personality-wise in our industry, whether it's like super outgoing or whatever it might be. I personally tend to be a very introverted person. I can be extroverted. I have actually practiced being more outgoing, but I actually consciously flip that switch. I will absolutely be the person in the corner of the room, left to my own devices. That's completely fine with me.
Yeah.
And if it's a gig where that guy is kind of quiet, we want somebody who's like the party animal. Well, I mean, maybe I'm not the guy for that. That's okay.
Right.
Yeah. We have some segments on the podcast. One of them's called Out of the Pocket. So what are some things that you have to do when you're not on the road that allow, when Mark goes on the road, him to be his full authentic self and to keep those morals and values and just your personality like alive and well, to give that artist or that band 110% of you?
Yeah, I love this question. For me, whether I'm on the road or off the road, to me, it's my two keys. Every single day, I want to get exercise. That could be as simple as a run or a full extended workout at the gym. I kind of don't care. I have to exercise because it's actually more about what happens here than about what happens here. I've never cared. I don't like pursue gains in the gym. That's just, I have that kind of body type. That's just how it is.
You little swollen guy.
But that's how hard I work for here. And then the other thing, every day, I've been practicing meditation for about 20 years now. I expect of myself 30 minutes worth of meditation every day. And those things support me interacting with the world in a way that I want to, that I expect of myself. I'm also big on eating healthy, but that kind of runs itself. Like sometimes you have to have fast food. That's the only option. But otherwise, I'm like grabbing the salad. But the exercise and the meditation, it's hard for me to overstate how important those are. And I'm not someone who goes on social media and talks about meditation changing everyone's life. But a lot of people, people have their own mind made up about it already. I'm a student of it and have taken a deep dive, no surprise, with a lot of different approaches. But those two things, if I'm not getting those, people around me will notice. They will notice.
Do you have to bring some of that on the road, like as far as tangible things? Like, is there something that allows you to keep those healthy habits? Is there like, I don't know, how could you describe it? Like you cook on the road?
No, man. You know what? I'm actually a good cook. I like cooking. But
favorite dish that you like to cook?
So believe it or not, I love making pasta, like from scratch.
Okay.
The sauce from scratch, the whole 9 yards. The only thing I haven't gotten into yet is mozzarella, but at some point I'm going to learn to make my own mozzarella.
Have you learned to make bread?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can do bread from scratch.
Yeah.
I heard
yeah.
that.
We could do a whole family meal that is Italian meal that is entirely from scratch.
spaghetti is my favorite. So
my grandmother, one of my grandmothers was, you know, from Italy, Italian. So I have the recipe from Central Italy. I love that. The food that I love that I don't make is sushi. So if I'm at a restaurant, I'm going to usually go for sushi.
Yeah.
Man, sounds like we know you guys. First 100 subscribers, Mark's house, Italian food. I'm behind the cake.
100. That would take a long time to make pasta for 100 people. But yeah, so on the road, to answer your question, on the road, sometimes it just is what it is, man.
Yeah.
It's great if you're on a package tour and there's, say, consistent catering every day, you can do a lot better. If it's just, you know, the club circuit or like the county fair circuit, sometimes every day you're just being fed like the best barbecue you've ever had. And it's tough, but that's where the exercise component for me really kicks in. It's hard to outrun a bad diet, but you can do a lot to offset things. And especially being physical, like doing physical stuff, you know, drummers have an advantage there compared to a lot of other instruments.
That's awesome, man. I love how you create habits off the road that are going to be transmitted on the road.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
And like I said, you asked about earlier, we talked about the coaching and the playing. And to me, it's like, how close can I bring these things together?
Because they can live close together.
Yeah.
They don't have to be this huge, you know, oh, this is way over here and this is way over here.
One of the biggest things that, most common things that I hear from people when I'm coaching at companies is people, they'll separate their work self from their personal self, and getting them to understand that there's one you. What happens here impacts what happens here. And yeah, sure, maybe you talk differently in this situation or whatnot, but you are one person. And gosh, the gas you put in the tank impacts the drive you get. And the habits that you have impact how you will respond to things that come into your experience.
a part of that segment we also get into is there a habit that you've had to cut that was really hard to get to where you are now? If there was one habit that you'd have to talk about.
Man, I guess I'd call this out. I would say that there was a time in my career, and it's organization dependent, when you probably have more drinks than you would. I never crossed the point of having a problem with that because it was always situationally dependent, and it wasn't like my own habit. But I think I've always been attuned to, like, hey, this may be a thing right now, but this is not something that's going to stick around. When especially like the peak days of the Tyler Farr gig, we were such a great group, band and crew. Everyone got along. It was so much fun, and we had a riot of a time. Never like illegal or immoral, but we just had a blast. But there's that sense of like, this is a moment in time. Have your fun. Like this don't last forever.
Enjoy.
And I think for me, I wouldn't necessarily say it was a habit that I had to shift, but it was being aware and remaining conscious, instead of what can happen is things become unconscious and habitual, and then you're on a train and you're like, where are we going and who's running this thing? Because I'm not in control. I think I would cite that, and as sort of a cautionary tale. And some people never get in any situations like that, and I respect it. But I could see how that could get out of hand very quickly.
Snowball.
Yeah. And with, if you don't maintain that awareness, that's exactly how it starts happening.
Yeah. I think it's along those lines of, the more excuse that you make for allowing one thing, then it's just allowing that other thing.
Yeah.
And you just start lowering the bar, and the bar keeps getting lower and lower and lower. And it's more in tune to temporary highs, temporary pleasures. Like, okay, what satisfies me right now? And I think that's one of the bigger things in just modern society is like, okay, I just want what helps me right now. I just want the quick fix. I just want the now. And I think that's just a very, like, you need a lot of discipline, a lot of determination to be like, okay, I'm going to not satisfy the flesh right now. I'm just going to kind of get into what allows me to get into that meditative state and to know what's right for me. Because you're unraveling, peeling back those layers of, okay, why do I want this? Why does this satisfy me? what can I do to get to me where I want to be in the long run? Even if you do have short-term goals, it takes that determination, that willpower to want to get there in the first place.
Yeah.
Yourself.
And the everything you're illustrating, the reflection, taking the time to reflect, being like living consciously is how I would put it. That is something that some people do innately, and some people learn it along the way. Some people never learn it. But I think that's a service we can all do for ourselves, even in smaller situations of, hey, what happened today in whatever way, could I have handled that differently? Should I have? You know, what might I have done if X, Y, and Z? That process of reflection is so powerful to make sure that we are doing in the longer term the things that align with, you know, what you say and what you do, that hopefully they line up.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's within your means of coaching, do you coach multiple people at one time? And you said you go into like the corporate world. It's like
when I do corporate, there's big business for team coaching and group coaching, but I primarily work one-on-one. Sometimes I'll get hired for like a speaking engagement that is either about like sharing my course with like college students and things like that. And I've done some corporate speaking, but I wouldn't call that coaching necessarily, because it's not that reflective process. I'm usually working one-on-one with somebody, and I enjoy that because of how deep you can go. Like you can go broad with lots of people, but you can go really deep with one person.
When you get into that deep part, what would you say is one of your favorite topics to get into people's lives about? It's like one of your most like, okay, somebody wants to talk about that or they want to work on that, and you not only have the experience in it, but you've seen the reflection in others blossom after you get to the other end of it. What is one thing?
Fulfillment.
Okay.
Fulfillment is like one of my favorite topics, because many people will either never think about it or think that it's not something that you could really work toward. It's just something that arises spontaneously. I mostly through like the psychology nerd that I am, if you go back and read some of the early humanists like Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow, I kind of piece together the way I put it that fulfillment comes from living your values. I'm not talking about happiness here. Happiness is like, oh, I found $5 or I got a call. Like, happiness is great, but like it's so fleeting. I think that we can have even bigger goals than happiness. Fulfillment is like, you know, you can feel fulfilled even if you're suffering, maybe, even if you're sick, even if you're grieving. And so what I love to do is work with people on their personal values and how we are orienting things action-wise to make sure we're upholding these and going deeper with them and keeping them front of mind. That's the recipe for a fulfilled person. And that's the most rewarding place that I get to work with people, because everyone's got different values. It's not just, oh, be a good person, but I've got like an assessment that I go through with people on it and everything, and we're able to look at both the big picture and the day-to-day to see, hey, how are these showing up? What are the barriers to you really living them out? That's when people really start lighting up, is when we start getting them aligned with their values. And even when things aren't going their way in a life sense, they can say, but I feel good. I'm at peace with this.
Right. And would you say that like your clients, like are they long-term clients? Do you try to stick to like a 3 to 6 month window, or are they just, some of these clients have been with you for years? Like,
a lot of my clients will stick around for quite some time, because usually what brings us together is some initial goal, and then that usually branches out in a few places. And even once they've reached the point that they originally went for, they'll want to keep some sort of a maintenance relationship going. So we'll touch base like monthly or something like that. Sometimes people like to use a coach, a qualified coach who has really all those deep listening skills to make a decision. And sometimes people will reach out for 1, 2, or 3 conversations about, I am making this big decision and I want you to help walk me through it so that I don't regret what I'm going to do. But I'd say the most common thing is that people would connect. We'd connect for 6 to 18 months, oftentimes, and it would be touching on things that go from very small day to day to also the biggest of the big.
What is the hardest thing that you've seen in your practice when you've had clients that are bringing a problem to you, and maybe you don't have the answer, or you do, and you're having to see if they're willing to either put the work in or they just can't put the work in?
Well, the first thing, and I know this wasn't your question, but I am in the practice usually of not giving answers, fortunately, because they know better than I do. I often, if we were talking for a long time about like a decision for you, if I'm listening carefully enough, I'm going to hear you circle around your answer
Right.
more than half the time. Even if you're like, I don't know what to do. But by the time we piece through all the things that you've said and the ways that you act and your body language and the tone of your voice and all those things, you're going to be like, oh, I did what? And I did that. And okay. And then you're going to start to feel a sense of peace kind of coalescing around the thing that you kind of thought you knew, but you weren't quite sure. But what is difficult is when we have to address those, whether it's ambiguity, uncertainty, or sometimes actual barriers. And that can be very hard. And that's why coaches that solve problems and tell you what to do are kind of like a bull in a china shop, because we need, all of us as humans, need other humans to be there with us. And sometimes the biggest gift I could give somebody is to sit with you in this completely crappy situation and hear you. Because sometimes we just got to go through it.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, this shouldn't happen, I deserve better. Sometimes it happens, man.
Well, how do you prepare your mind for, like, let's say hey man, I tried out for this artist, or I'm doing this audition, or, you know, someone says, hey Mark, I might throw your name in this hat. How do you prepare your mind for that no, or that kind of unknown possibility?
You prepare over time for the no. When you get the call, you prepare to make it a yes, make it a yes, make it a yes. But then if you get a no, you fall back on all that long-term preparation, the things that created some stillness, some centeredness in yourself. And what I like to zoom out to is the concept of regret. What do you regret? What would you regret? What do we need to make sure you don't regret? And if you stand by, let's say with the example of an audition, if you were prepared and you were proud of how you performed and you felt all these things that were in your control, you did them, I can promise you something. When you're on your deathbed, you are not going to be regretting that. You're going to say, it didn't happen. When you're 60 years removed, you're just going to say, it didn't happen. It'll hurt less then. It still hurts now, but the key is not having things that you would regret, where you might say, you know, I didn't learn the material well enough and I blanked. Or I actually said yes and I don't have that bag together musically. Or I was, maybe I didn't sleep enough and I was completely off conversationally and I'm not proud of how I showed up in conversation or something. So controlling for regret is a big thing, so that you can find that peace afterwards of saying, you know, I stand by that and I'm proud of what I did, even if I'm not proud of the outcome.
I like that, controlling for regret. Yeah.
That's a big piece.
Regret's a powerful motivator, man. And not so much in the negative way, but because if you keep it in mind, it allows you to be more positive and say, you know what, I wish I had this outcome, but every single thing that led up to discovering that outcome, I stand by. I'm proud of how I did it. And you know what, I can believe that the next time might be different.
Why do you think there's some cats out there that, let's say, like, you're on a gig and they're like, hey man, we're running stems, you got to run Ableton, and you have to be in the control of the computer? Why do you think there's some cats that are like, man, I'm not going to do that? You know, why is there some cats out there that aren't going to do that thing that's going to make everybody's life easier, or not going to want to, you know, maybe drive the bus, or not going to want to drive the van? Like, why do you think there's cats that kind of shoot themselves in the foot like that?
Well, I think I do respect everybody. Like, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But I think there's also this line of be a chameleon, learn everything, can be good or bad, but the idea of a growth mindset, I think, is an important thing to adopt, where we can do more tomorrow than we did today if we give ourselves a chance. And you have to be a realist about how things are evolving in any industry. For example, like if you work in web development, you need to be aware of what's happening with AI right now. That is impacting your life, and it really will in the future. Same thing with a drummer about knowing how to run, the most common playback software.
Yeah.
You can't say, I want those kind of gigs if you don't have all the skills to get those kind of gigs.
Right.
If you just want to play in some like raw punk or rock situation that's not on a grid and not that, then I don't think you need to learn Ableton at all. But you should be a realist. If you say, I want to do this kind of a pop thing, gosh, you know the gig's not just sitting behind the drums and playing those grooves.
Yeah.
So what I would say to people overall is that it pays off to have a growth mindset, to realize that I can be more than I am right now. And it would be great to grow in those ways. But I also respect those differences. Sometimes, an unwillingness to do certain things might be tied to something that the rest of us don't know about. So like, the example of driving. I've been in some vans back in the day where I'm like, I wish everybody would just let me drive the whole time because I want to get home alive.
Oh, yeah.
So it's difficult to paint with a broad brush there, but I think in general you should always keep in mind, hey, what are the skills required for what I claim I want? If I'm not willing to do that, then I must not want that.
Yeah. So to kind of piggyback off that. And I guess this is our last question, man. We have a segment called Welcome to the Pain, or kind of Bring the Pain. And what is the most painful thing you've had to endure to get to where you are now?
Are we speaking broadly or just musically? Well,
You could take it
Wherever you want, man.
I mean, yeah.
man,
It's welcome the pain for a reason, because it is one of those things where
It's a deep question.
as far as you want to go.
yeah. Well, I'll share. My father passed from ALS in 2017. And it's not one thing. It's not the passing necessarily. ALS is a terrible disease.
Yeah.
Horrible, horrible, terrible disease of suffering. I got to play my childhood bucket list venue back in 2015 for the first time.
Where was that?
Hershey Park Stadium
Oh,
in Hershey,
dude.
PA.
Congrats,
And
who's that with?
with Tyler Farr. We were out with Jason Aldean. Jason headlined there. And my dad came to the show. My mom and dad came to the show, and that was the last time my dad got to see me play Walking Under His Own Power. And that, pain. When you talk about pain, it's all the layers of that. This is the culmination of a childhood dream, and also the fleeting nature of life, period. And having to confront it all and realizing, through those years, me realizing, man, you don't get to have years and years of bliss. Life involves these things going together that don't seem like they belong. It doesn't seem like the culmination of a childhood dream goes in the same day as being in pain because I see my dad limping with his cane and I know he's about to get in an electric, a chair. That kind of aspect for me is a big part of what has led me down this path that I'm in now, which is that sort of weird dual career thing. And it's because I realized that sometimes music isn't even enough. Music was enough for a big part of my life, but all of the lessons I learned through my father's illness and how that impacted, in many ways, those were the biggest years of my touring career was when my dad had ALS. And realizing that is kind of the way that life shows up, not the way that we tell the cool story about it. I think that is a lesson because it helps me remember that we don't have to be looking for that perfect moment. It doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes you get to play to the biggest crowd you've ever had and you have a fever. That is the life that we actually showed up for. And finding ways to make peace with that, learning how to make peace with that and help other people make peace with that. That's some of the gain that I've received on the other side of that pain.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So I guess to wrap up, my last question to you would be, what is the biggest piece of advice you can offer? And I know this is a drum podcast, but I'll be blunt. I don't care what drums you play, right?
Play Ludwig drums.
Yeah. But what is the best piece of advice you can offer just another human being to be sustainable?
care for yourself. Care for yourself. And I mean that in every way. Physically, mentally, spiritually, relationally, financially, every way. Care for yourself. It doesn't mean only look out for yourself to the exclusion of others, but care. Like, you know, anyone with a kid would understand, like, I care for my daughter.
Yeah.
If you can care for yourself, you're going to be okay. And you'll be in a better position to care for other people, which is a lot of our default. But care for yourself, put your oxygen mask on in all those ways. And when you need help, you ask for it, because you deserve help.
That's awesome.
I love that. And I have to say, like, thank you for sharing that story, because for the previous question about your dad, like, that it really hits personally, just to know that, you know, you can be at the very top, and life still has a way of being life, and yet it's like you really have to choose. Well, actually, sometimes you aren't given a choice, but you in that setting of being at the pinnacle of touring, but yet seeing somebody you love go through something so hard,
Yeah.
and you have to choose not necessarily one or the other, but it's just that life is happening.
Yeah.
And I have a personal story on that way later to talk about in a part 2 or something, but that is so heavy, because it's like, I love both of these things, and I just have to endure it.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I can do to stop either one of them.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So,
well, Mark, thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
This has been episode 2 of Nashville. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Mark Poiesz.
Love talking with you guys. Thanks.